Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. Today we have the amazing Paul Bonham with us from MMF. Hi, Paul, how are you?
Hello, Saskia. It's good to be here. I'm all right. Yeah, I'm all right. It's a December Friday afternoon,
Oh,
so kind of relaxed.
good. Thank you ever so much for coming along today, sharing your time and your expertise with the listeners and viewers so they can understand a little bit more about the MMF, about you, and about the work that you do in the music industry to make it more inclusive and diverse. So, thank you so much ever again for coming along. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to be here, and I think, first of all, thanks for creating the space for conversations like this. Much appreciated. Um, Yeah, my name's Paul, and I am the Professional Development Director at an organization called the Music Managers Forum,
Yeah.
also known as the MMF, which is a trade body, but also I think the way I'd describe it is it's a human body in the music industry because we're made up of a membership of 1,500 music managers that are mainly based in the UK.
Yeah. And what more do you do for the MMF to support underrepresented disadvantaged communities? Because I know you also run an accelerator program. So do you want to talk a little bit more about the accelerator program and how that works as well, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, one of the key parts of my job is through a program called Accelerator, which we co-created with YouTube about 6 years ago
Mhm.
um, to really support um, managers that had been working really hard for a couple of years in their career, but still coming up against challenges.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a funding program which invests in the music manager's business, which they can spend on their own living salaries. They can, which addresses the problem around sort of cash flows and equity of finance, but also brings music managers tend to be sort of quite silo operated, particularly at the grassroots level or the independent level. And so it brings a cohort of managers at a similar stage in their career together to really be part of a peer group. And so,
Network.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably the most sort of um, obvious work we do around equalities and diversity and inclusion. But it's not the only way in which we work. Like we have a number of partnerships across the industry, um, working with things like Black Lives in Music or with the Power Up campaign, cohorts and campaign, or with uh, Women in Control. We've done a lot of work with them. Like yeah, various different partnerships as well. As a sort of membership body, we've really seen a lot of change in who gets to be or who identifies as a music manager. And I think that works really accelerated or escalated in the past sort of 7, 8 years to really as an organization embrace just the full breadth of humans that work with artists. Um, so yeah.
Well done, and thank you. How long have you actively been doing music and entertainment? How long have you actually been doing this? And how did you get into the entertainment industry and the music industry in the first place?
Wow. I say that I've always worked in music.
Yeah.
Like because I have. I've done different things. Um I like me and my friends. Well, they weren't even my friends at the time. I had the opportunity to get involved with a group of people that were setting up a music festival, and it was very much me putting myself out there and saying, "Can I come and help?" And everyone was voluntary. It was a voluntary festival.
Yeah.
I was 17 years old, and I just turned up and started helping.
Yeah.
And that involved mucking out a cow shed.
Yeah.
Um, It involved digging trenches for us to put the cables. It involved, stacking hay bales so that we could build the toilets. Um, ha it does sound like I was working in the 1970s. This was actually not, which I find totally bonkers.
Yeah,
But it was the late 90s.
yeah,
But I think community uh, touch points in the music industry are really, really important because that's often where people have their first professional access. I'm a big fan of like a get on and do it type of attitude. Not like and I've heard people talk about do it together rather than do DIY. It's a DIT, a sort of
definitely do it together.
do it
Yeah.
together. And that was my experience of getting into the music industry. And it's always the message that I share with people when they say, how can you get a job in the music industry? And I'm like, well, what are you offering? What are you contributing? And who are you going to go and collaborate with?
Yeah.
Um, it's not an industry for me that was based on job applications.
Right.
So I ended up doing a music festival, which evolved into a record label and a publishing company. And then someone asked me to manage them, and I ended up going, "Oh yeah, I will become your music manager." And we went on and got negotiated some big record deals and publishing deals with Warner
Done.
Music.
Yeah.
Um, and it sort of goes on from there, really. So that's how I got involved. And I think how I stay involved, is the music and the community still. Like listening to stuff, listening to people, meeting people. And it's such a key part of the work that I do at the MMF is community building, really. And whilst I've got the lofty title of Professional Development Director,
Well
in
done.
practice,
Well,
really, it means knowing our membership
yes.
and connecting our membership to other people that might know things that I don't know that they need to know that I might have heard of. Or
Good
it's
at that.
like,
You're good at
yeah,
that. Yeah, you're
yeah,
very
like it's
good at
like, and that's empowering because again, it's just that community coming together.
that.
And that's been the thread of my career, really.
You've always been very, very friendly, very, very approachable, and very down to earth. Now, I know you're from Oxfordshire, where I originally came from as well. Like, how did you navigate that and coming from Oxford to London and being part of this amazing community? How did that work for you, Paul?
Well, I mean, I did really struggle as a teenager, living in a village in Oxfordshire.
Mm,
I found it really hard. A lot of it was my own, in my own head, growing up as a queer.
I know that.
Um, yeah, a lot of it was in my head, because uh, I know I have since learned that I'm not the only one that had that experience in the small village I grew up in. But also, I wouldn't say the adversities were obvious or violent.
Yeah,
They were subtle.
yeah,
Yeah. They were subtle, and complex, but not obvious or violent.
yeah.
And I think that that's actually really important to recognize because um, if they're not obvious, that still doesn't mean that they're not there. And inclusion sometimes feels better when it is a bit obvious. Yeah.
But no,
So
I don't know, because sometimes it can be that tick box exercise, and sometimes you're thinking, is this authentic or is this just tokenism? And I think there's that balance as well, isn't there, on that one?
yeah. Oh yeah, no, there's definitely a balance, but sometimes it can fill, and I think particularly for young people,
Yes.
amongst one another as well. Like, the lads in my village didn't know that they were excluding me because they all liked Oasis and I didn't like Oasis, but I went there, I tried to fit in. Yeah. They
Yeah.
didn't know, but
Yeah.
actually, yeah, I mean, I grew up I was talking about this in the office. We grew up under Section 26, where we had no um uh,
Representation at all.
Section 28, sorry. We had no positive representation of LGBT or queer experiences in our schooling or community, particularly. So, I think that representation is more about where you've seen inclusion as a result of inclusion further down. Um, But yeah, so I was desperate to come to London. I knew I needed to move to
Yeah,
London,
I had to.
like straight on.
Yeah.
And the day I came into, I'd come to a few gigs beforehand independently. My parents had brought me up to Camden Town quite a lot, like on Saturday afternoons. I knew I was North London. Like I'd gone to gigs in King's Cross, yeah. I knew I'd got gigs in King's Cross, and Camden, and as soon as I went up the escalator in Angel, a ridiculously long escalator,
Still,
um,
still there.
yeah, I knew it was home.
Yeah.
And I transferred, I worked from Sainsbury's, and I transferred from Sainsbury's because I had a job, I could access a student loan, to help, and I was like, I can do my music stuff here. So, that's sort of what I did.
Well done. And thank God you did that as well, because you've made such a difference in the music industry. Paul, you've been absolutely awesome in inspiring change, representation, visibility, you know, all supporting all these underrepresented, disadvantaged communities, especially with the Accelerator Programme that MMF is doing right now, to support these underrepresented groups in becoming more, part of the industry. And I think that's really, really important. So make sure you keep up the amazing work for that. Because I think you're absolutely awesome. And I just wanted to
Oh.
ask you, like, getting into that, did you have a musical education? Did you have a passion for that in the beginning? Is that just something you learned? How did that work?
Um, I think that there's no formal music education that I've had, no music business
Right.
education. But when I was 14, 15, I listened to a lot of John Peel.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
like I listened to a lot of John Peel and other radio shows, but John was amazing. And John was also one of the first people that made a big impression on my life by the fact he listened to me. Because I had something called Radio One Sound City happened in Oxford in 1997, and I'd wrote him and Steve Lamacq lots of letters because all of the BBC gigs were over 18 and I wouldn't have been able to go to them. So I
Right.
quoted like, the BBC Royal Charter at John Peel, and he sent me a letter back and offered to meet me to talk about the issue when he was doing a recce. And I will always sort of say how important it is to listen to young people,
Yeah.
because he sort of gave me permission to be heard. And
Yeah.
that is such an incredible thing to someone that I spent hours and hours listening to. And John's eclectic range and exploration of music has massively influenced my cultural education and my understanding of people. Because I was like, hey, there's all sorts of different people making all sorts of different wacky
Yeah.
noises.
Where are we? Yeah.
Yeah, and so that became my, when I locked myself in my bedroom as a teenager, scared of the boys that listened to Oasis, music became my whole universe of
Yeah.
people because I could understand the stories behind the records. And I think that having that currency has been what has educated me. It's the people and the music. Um, and then I'd say my more formal or my better education around, I did study social sciences,
Right.
and that definitely helped. And I also worked at an organization called Attitude is Everything.
What's the name of
Um,
the organization?
and I went and worked there as a sort of 2 day a week job to help support the rest of the music stuff I was doing. But
Yes.
when I went and worked at Attitude is Everything, which is a charity which improves deaf and disabled access to live music clubs and festivals, um, I learned about something called the social model of disability. And that I think is a theory, an understanding that we can apply to everyone.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that the individual isn't the problem, so it's society is the one that puts the barriers up.
Yeah.
And so how can we recognize those barriers that are on an individual level and address them structurally? Um, and that all comes down to the attitude. So working with Suzanne Bull and the couple of years I did, um, I was on the board as well. The engagement I had with Attitude is Everything, I think, was actually a real schooling for me, because I
Great.
learned so much.
Yeah. So is the MMF actually. You've all done some great work. I know some amazing organisations, and kind of what challenges and barriers have you faced? Obviously, moving from the countryside to London, being from outside of a community, trying to build a new community in the music industry. Paul, that's not easy. That comes with a lot of challenges and barriers. How have you managed to navigate that and try and make it a better place?
Um, I think I think what I always focused on and what I experienced was actually building a peer group community. Like I didn't really look to get into the music industry as it was. In the sort of early 2000s, 90s, it was actually not very attractive. There was a lot of people that were not actually that likable. And there was a sort of hangover of this brilliant 90s era in the early 2000s. And I remember everyone being quite negative and that, oh, the music industry is on its last legs, it's really bad.
Very
And
man.
like,
Yeah.
and I was like, me and my mates have got a cool little festival on a farm, and we started putting on gigs in the Windmill in Brixton, where I mean, it was an Irish pub in the back streets of Brixton that no one was going to. We weren't trying to do the mainstream, and so we went to our own safe place and built a safe place that for us.
What could go to?
Um, and then I think that I'm a sort of believer of the power of attraction rather than promotion.
Yeah.
Um, and I think people saw that we were having fun, and then they kind of came and joined us.
That's a lovely.
And I think that's really important,
Yeah.
because if you see the music industry as one monolithic thing and made up by three major companies, it's going to be hard to access. But if you see it as a spectrum of millions of, well, not millions, but lots and lots and lots of small micro enterprises that are led by humans, you will build. Yeah,
Yeah.
going back to community, like again.
We can break
So
them out as well, can't we?
there has been barriers. I think by being queer, by being non I don't like to use the word non-binary because it informs there is a binary, but
On gender
to
conforming.
non-conforming
Yeah.
around gender,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I have felt excluded. I don't have the secret language of football,
You
because I'm not interested in football. And
know
to
that.
get
I didn't
ahead
like
in
that.
music, you seem to
Yeah.
know a lot. You have to know a lot about football to get
That too.
like in certain
How sweet
networks.
as well. Like, who's your favorite football team? I don't really support football. Like, I even get asked that question. I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't support football. Like, what are you on
yeah,
about? It's not my
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So I totally understand that. And that is such a trailblazing thing. You're being authentic, you're representing communities, but you also have that real lived experience of what it's like to be outside of the box. And I think what you're trying to do is say, look, we've got so much outside of the box that's not been catered for, that if we cater for this, we can grow the industry, we can build, we can boost what we have, productivity, inclusion, and diversity, which I think our country represents in the first place, right?
hmm Yeah, I mean the whole country is very eclectic, and the music industries, are like there's so much economic value to the different genres and different subsectors of the industry, which when they're all added together make such a great story.
Beautiful.
Um,
Yeah.
and I work really intimately with a group of 20 managers that are all very different. And my favorite moments of it is on the first day when they come in and they kind of feel, because of experience, not ego, but they feel that they know the music industry because they've got so far. And then they come in and they're like, oh, I don't know
Don't
anyone
even
here.
thought of it.
Yeah. They're like, it's sort of a bit like, oh, I don't know anyone here. And I'm like, well, you're selected, you're here to build a community of managers that's your sort of private community. Because they all work in different genres, they're all geographically from different places, and they're all just culturally different. And um, having that intersectionality, but a shared common goal, which is, oh, we're here to be music managers and represent artists and build artists. That's their shared value. And I think at a wider scale, the shared value of the music industry is to, celebrate and make economic sense of music for musicians and the people that support them. So we've all got shared values. So there is a big picture, but recognizing the fragmentations and the micros
But that's hard.
is the beauty. You know, that's the colorful the color and the detail.
And that is also the tricky part of it. I think, the music industry is ever evolving. It's very fast paced and it's forever changing all the time. So what's your advice to a music manager that's looking to get into maybe your program, for example, that's just building up, that's got a few artists that are coming along, they're representing the community. What kind of things do they need in order to be able to apply to be part of your program?
Um, I mean, I think a recognition that you can't do everything all at once.
Right?
And whilst it does move very fast, it actually doesn't move that fast at all either.
Mhm.
Because the most important transaction is still the artist to fan relationship.
Okay.
Um, and that, you know, is about that's the core thing that a manager's got to do. How am I going to work to build a fan base for this particular artist? And so for some artists, it literally is still selling CDs on Bandcamp. You don't need to worry about AI. You don't need to worry about, international, visas and everything yet. Yeah, that might be things for later, but I think this sort of what is the simple business model at the moment? Like who are the real core fan bases that I'm targeting and how am I going to do those initial building blocks?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because handing it over and sort of saying to things you can't control, oh, you know, we need a TikTok viral moment. Well, I don't know how that happens. That is quite
I don't know.
sporadic.
I'm
But
still,
try and build in those real things,
yeah,
through that, be that through gigging or DJing or club nights, the real stuff makes it real.
good.
Um,
And that's what counts, right? Because you learn from that all the time. And I think it's about development and learning and progression. So, what's your kind of thoughts on equality, diversity, inclusion at the moment in the music industry? And how could we improve on that?
um, Weirdly, about most things in the music industry at the moment, I'm really positive, and people are quite surprised because there's a lot of doom and gloom.
Yeah,
Um, but I don't know if it's because I've worked in it now for a really long time. I know it's getting better.
yeah, yeah,
Like I'm like it has got so much better.
yeah.
Like um, yeah, that's kind of what I'm, and I want to spread that message because I think that it goes with a message of hope and
Yeah,
sustainability.
yeah,
That it gets better. It just keep going, keep fighting, keep moving, keep true to your beliefs, because it gets even better. Yeah. Because I think if we just look at sort of headlines and data all the time, particularly on an annual level,
yeah,
it can feel very disempowering.
yes,
Um, but there are more people earning something out of music than there were 20 years ago because there was fewer people that maybe they earn a little bit more, but
yeah.
now there's more people that are probably earning a little bit more. Yeah. Or they're earning something. And it is hard, and it's definitely hard, but there's more people sustaining a career like for longer because it used to be you had a very short career. You might have, one hit wonders. We don't
Yeah.
really get one hit wonders no more. We get kind of like,
I hear that. Yeah, actually, that's true.
yeah,
Apart from the
you
TikToks,
know,
you might get one or two that come through that just have the one hit and you never hear again. But I
yeah,
think, we're starting to sustain those careers more, which is very, very important, actually.
yeah. And they might not be at the level, but that person that had a TikTok hit is still earning off that hit. And they
Good.
might be still releasing music, but the general public might not know enough about it. But people don't give up as much anymore. And I think that's a really, really important thing from an EDI point of view, because that means that people are staying included.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
And leadership and the sort of higher level of, particularly in the workforce, does take time to change, and there is change happening. Um, there's definitely change happening, but it is slow.
Yeah.
Um, and artistically, there's now more choices. There's so much more different music that you can listen to. Um, so creatively, it's different. But there are massive challenges. I'm really proud of the work that the MMF's been involved in doing with the Creative Industries Standards Authority, which is looking at really setting up a structure
Nice.
um, for monitoring, addressing, managing, and strategizing around bullying and harassment. Because now things have been named and coming out from the history, there's got to be a system in place to protect the future. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
100%.
think that there's been some really seismic systematic changes in the past 5 years that makes me think, what can we do in the next 5 years?
Totally.
Um, that's going to be incredible.
Yeah,
Um,
I hope so. I hope so. And I think, that's another thing that I like to see is those diverse voices and they're being authentic and representative of the communities in which they're from. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that's something that we really need as a cultural, representation to the world because we're representing the UK. And I think, we need to do better on an international stage of doing that because if we do, then we can bring more people into the UK and we can also support our music better from the UK too and bring more money in. So I think that's really, really crucial, to be honest.
Yeah, there are definite challenges because of the globalization of everything. With export and import, I think of music at the moment. It's interesting because touring being so hard. I
Yeah,
think that's really tough. But then the shows are also, shows are getting bigger, and there's some incredible artists um, headlining and coming through, actually. I think that we have seen a shift there. Seeing Chapel Roan headline Reading this next year
I'm
feels
on.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
I'm like, this is cool. Like new headliners do come through. Like I went to go and see Central C at Reading last year and
Yeah.
um I had to just go and see Central C. That's all I wanted to do. I only went and saw him and a couple of other really small acts. Um, because it was such a big cultural moment. Like the hot for me to go back to that youth festival that I've been going to since I was 15-ish, to
Yeah.
see the whole audience. Semtex have been playing beforehand, and then the whole audience were like UK rap, UK rap, you and I was like,
Change the game. You're changing the
I
game.
was like,
That's part of
I was
that.
just like, Sense has come out of nowhere, really. And to see this enormous UK rap celebration at Reading, the Rock Festival,
One of the
I was
best.
like, yeah, this is diversity change.
It
Yeah.
is. And I support that as well. And well done for that as well. Because I'm sure I met Central C at one of your music managers forum meetups as well. I'm sure I did at Coco's at one point. I think I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've not got much time left, Paul. We've got 7 minutes. If you want to connect, if people want to connect with you, find out more about the MMF, Music Managers Forum, how can they do that and how would they have to apply and when by?
Cool. Well, the MMF is a membership organization for anyone that has a professional interest in music management. So we do have people that are right at the start of their careers. They might be managing their family members, or something like that. So or they might be very professional, like Elton John and Ed Sheeran's manager and Adele's managers and all of, yeah, we're a real inclusive, like, for the stage that you're at. Um, uh, our membership is like on a monthly or annual subscription, so you pay a small amount, either by a month or you can pay it all off in one go. And we have lots of events to keep you engaged and educated. So it's a very open invite for people. The Accelerator Programme opens in January, and people make a video submission to apply for that. Um, uh, you need to certainly have a track record in music management. So I've been working as a professional for at least 18 months.
Yeah.
And your artists need to have some turnover because it's a professional program. So, you've got to have a business to manage, really.
Yes. It's not a hobby, it's a business.
Yes, and like I know some brilliant people that do sort of management and artist support as a hobby, and I think it's a wonderful thing. It absolutely can be a hobby, and starts as a hobby for many actually, but and grows sometimes very quickly. So yeah, hopefully we've got something for everyone at all stages of their career.
And for anyone from
Uh,
from any community, and anyone can apply, and it's diverse for the whole of the UK. So anyone from the UK can apply as well. Is that correct?
yeah, we've membership is generally it's mainly all UK wide, but we do have some international members, and that's because they don't have resources, communities in their countries that they live in.
Right.
Um, we work in partnership with some other MMFs that are established in certain countries, like Canada, Australia, across Europe, but in certain places there's just no infrastructure, so they're going to join us.
On join
And
with
yeah,
us.
we've had people log in at 3 in the morning to do our training events because they're like, there's nothing else like it. But yeah, super inclusive. I mean, I think we've increased. It's been really good to see an increase over the past few years of the gender sort of diversity within our community. I think we're about 40% um, women now in the membership. But
Yeah,
at our board level, our leadership level, so we have a board that's made up of our members. We're over 60% women on the board at the
I love
moment.
that.
And we have
I
a female chief exec as well. So we're definitely really interested at having all genres and all communities feel that they are contributing to the MMF, but also that there's things that are there to support them.
Yes, which is super important, and well done again for the work that you and Annalise, and also, what's her name? I can't.
Annabella,
Annabella,
we're going to have to edit this because
that's
Annalise
it.
doesn't work with us no more.
Congratulations to all of you for doing the amazing work you do, and to represent and to also support all the music managers and the music industry in a whole, as a whole, as a trade body. I think you do a great job. So just keep up doing the amazing work you do. I think it's fantastic. And also, Paul, if anyone wants to reach out to you personally, maybe from the LGBT community, wants to ask you any questions, how would they
Yeah.
be able to find you and connect with you?
My Instagram handle is at Paul Bonham.
Yeah.
So that's it really easy. And my email's paul at the mmf.net.
Fantastic. I'll leave all of that in the description below as well. And is there any major wins or successes you'd like to share with us before you go?
Um, Yeah, I think what's been nice, I set about doing something this year, sort of as a little personal um thing, which is called Music Plus, which is a little sort of private LGBT plus QIA whatever network. And we've had a few meetups, and I think that's been really good to bring people that are marginalized from their experience of sexual orientation and their gender identity, whatever, they define as, whatever anyone defines as, to just have a little secret society. Because one of the things about like having hidden characteristics, is that sometimes we don't spot each other. We don't know where we are.
Yeah.
And when you're in a room and you can feel that you're a very isolated um, person because you might feel that the room is against you.
Yes.
Um, it's been really good to build some allyships
Right.
and it's happened. Like I walk into a party and I'm like, oh, I know they're in the Music Plus group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we've been out and
Um,
it's Paul. I feel safe now. I know someone
yeah.
that
And
it's
I
like,
think that's been really nice to develop a little bit. It's very informal, but I'm pleased that we're developing that. Um, cool.
thank you ever so much. We've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to say
Thank
goodbye.
you.
Thank you ever so much.
Yay.
And make sure you have a good weekend. And I can't wait to see you again.
Um, yeah, you have a good weekend too.
Thank you ever so much, Paul. We'll catch up soon. Thank you.
Cool. Okay.
Bye.
Saskia,
Go on.
bye. Yeah, there's one little, sorry, I might